Hey YouTube. It has been a while. It's been, I was gonna say a minute, but it's been a lot longer than that. And I don't know about you, but that's because the end of my 2023 was utterly insane. So I am back for the new year. If any of the rest of you are like me and struggling to say 2024 still, it's okay. We're just in the first week of the month. We will get there, I am convinced. But in the meantime, I did get a chance at the end of last year to speak to Alex Dunne, an Irish racing driver. He had literally just made his F3 debut in Macau right before I spoke to him just the weekend before. So we were chatting about that and also how he got to that point and his plans for the future. So originally this interview aired on the Big Red Bench on Corkstart FM, which I am the host of on Sundays. But I've got all of you from all over the globe, and I realise that that means that you may have no clue what the Big Red Bench is, or indeed Corkstart FM. So I have got permission to share this interview with you on my channel here on YouTube, and hopefully it's going to be the first of many interviews this year. I've already got a couple more lined up for you to enjoy, but this is going to be the first one for 2024. And I've also done a bit of a revamp of my channel graphics, you may have noticed. So drop a comment down below and let me know what you think of those. Love them, hate them, you could just be honest, you know? Okay, I'm going to stop blabbing now because I know that the real reason you're here is for this interview with Alex Dunne. So let's get into it. I know motorsport runs in your family, so I just want to kick off by kind of taking it back to the start and asking, what's actually your first ever motorsport memory?
Um, I'd say my first motorsport memory is probably being with my mum and my dad in Mondello. My mum used to work in Mondello, and my dad was a racing driver himself. So I think kind of from the age of 3, 4, pretty much as far as I can remember, I used to go to the track with my parents all the time, and I'd watch my dad racing, and sometimes he'd put me on his lap in his car and he'd take me around and he'd drive with him. So yeah, I've been around motorsport for a very long time.
As you mentioned, you're speaking to us today fresh off the back of making your Formula 3 debut in Macau, and that was with the High-Tech Pulse 8 team. I know you've been pushing to get F3 action, so what was it like to finally be in a position to get out there, especially at a track like Macau, which is pretty legendary at this stage?
Yeah, for sure. I think being in Macau is probably the biggest opportunity I've had to show what I'm capable of in my career. I think to get the opportunity, I think for my first F3 race to be at a track like Macau, I think it's probably arguably the biggest F3 race in the world, against some of the best junior drivers in the world. So yeah, it was pretty special. Obviously I've never raced in F3 before, and I've never raced on a street circuit. So yeah, I'm happy with how the weekend went.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's fair to say that you've made a pretty solid habit of coming into, new categories, new tracks, and pretty quickly getting results. What do you think is the most important tool that you have as a driver in your racing arsenal, let's say, that lets you adapt so quickly when you get into those new situations?
I would say the biggest thing is probably the simulator.
Mm.
We do the sim quite a lot at High Tech. I spent a couple of days there before I went to Macau, and then I use my own sim at home as well quite often, which I think helps. And then I think it was kind of a natural thing I think that came from karting. I
Mm.
think in karting we didn't really do a whole lot of driving when I was in karting, so very often I'd kind of have to just jump in and try to adapt as quick as possible. And I think kind of over time as I progressed, I think I kind of got a little bit better at that. So I think it kind of became a bit more of a natural thing, where I kind of had to force myself to adapt quickly. And I think in hindsight, that's probably helped me quite a lot.
What or who in your life kind of helps you keep a level head and a focused mind in those situations? Because it could be very easy to get kind of swallowed up or overwhelmed by it all.
I'd say mainly probably my mom and dad. I think they always kind of trying to keep me calm and keep me level-headed in these situations. I think we found out that there was opportunity for me to do Macau 2 weeks before the race. So there wasn't a whole lot of time for
Mm.
preparation. But yeah, I think initially I wasn't really sure what to expect. I think with it being such a big race at a street circuit in F3, it was all completely new to me. I wasn't really sure what to expect. I think you always have to believe in yourself and believe that you can do well. But I think with the small amount of experience, I wasn't really sure what it was going to be like. But I think in hindsight, I'm very happy we took the opportunity.
Yeah, what was the kind of highlight of the weekend for you, would you say? As you said, there's so many new things to deal with. What was the most exciting part for you?
Um, Probably race one, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think finishing second from sixth in race one. I think going into the race, my attitude was if I can make up some places, that would be nice. But if I stay where I am, I'd still be happy.
Mm.
So I think to end up coming away in second, I think I didn't really expect it to go that well. But yeah, I think I enjoyed the whole weekend. I think from my first push lap in FP1 to the beginning of the race, I had a big smile on my face the whole weekend. I think I've never experienced being so close to the walls around the
Mm.
track before in my life, which was something pretty special. So yeah, I think throughout the whole weekend, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, great for the future as well to have that skill, not be afraid to get too close.
Yeah.
I would say you definitely got more stamps on your passport than the average person of your age. What's your top track that you've raced at so far? And what's your dream track that you just would absolutely love to get a chance to race on?
Um, I'd say the top track I've raced now, I'm probably going to go with Macau.
Yeah,
Uh, that's probably the best one. And I'd say dream track, probably Monaco. Like another
nice.
street. I think from what I've heard from all the other drivers in F3, they all said that Monaco and F3 was pretty cool.
Mm.
So I'm looking forward to hopefully getting the opportunity to experience that. So yeah, I'd say Monaco.
I know that a seat in Formula One isn't necessarily the end goal for every racing driver, but I think you've been pretty clear that that's exactly where you're headed. What do
Yeah.
you see as your path to an F1 seat right now, given that you are getting into the feeder series?
I think to kind of progress up the ladder, I think the normal progression is F3, F2, F1.
Hmm.
Um, I think next year there's no plans as of yet. But I think eventually if we can get onto I think kind of the F1 support program
Mm.
in F3 and F2, if we can get the budget together, I think that's kind of the natural progression to Formula One.
Yeah. And for any other young drivers out there who are maybe a bit earlier in their journey, Alex's website is worth taking a look at because I love the fact that you have your goals set out there for kind of each stage. I think that's an awesome thing to put out into the world. And I'd love to know if that was your own idea or if that was a mum or dad suggestion.
No, that was my own idea.
Nice.
We kind of worked on the website together, and we kind of put a few of our own ideas in and put it together. But that one was mine.
Awesome. And you mentioned, kind of getting budget together, and that's obviously a massive part of any racing and motorsport. There's a
Yeah.
pretty decent cohort of Irish drivers competing at the moment across several disciplines. From your point of view, what can the rest of us do to sort of get behind Irish drivers? And, we already know the power of social media and everything like that in sports nowadays. So what do you think that we could be doing more of to increase I suppose, the exposure and the support that's going behind Irish racers?
I think unfortunately I can probably say that the support from Ireland towards racing drivers is probably quite a lot less than what you would see in other countries. I think especially financially,
Mm.
there's quite a lot less support compared to some of the other drivers in other countries. But in fairness, since I've kind of started to do a little bit better and progressed a bit more from F4 to GB3 to F3 now, I think the support I've gotten from the fans at home and from everybody who's watching motorsport and from Irish people who are just fans of motorsport, I think the support I've gotten is quite a lot more. I think especially even through the whole weekend at Macau, I think I had quite a lot of support from Irish people at home, which was really nice to see. It's a tricky one, but I think definitely the support from Irish people recently has been very nice. It's good to see that there's so many people at home supporting me and watching the sport, which I kind of never really knew before, but seeing
Mm.
that now is
Yeah, absolutely. We'll try and keep the ball rolling for as long as we can on that. What was your motivator to get into single seater racing? I know you've kind of mentioned the greats, Michael Schumacher and things like that before. Obviously, your dad as well would have been an inspiration. But
yeah.
are there any other names that you'd mentioned that you kind of admire their racing style?
I was always a big fan of Ayrton Senna when I was a kid.
Classic.
Uh, I think I watched his movie a couple of times when I was younger with my dad, and yeah, I watched back some of the old races, so I'd say Senna was probably a big one. And yeah, I think the plan to go single seaters was kind of something that was set out pretty early. I think once I started karting, I kind of had an idea that Formula One is where I'd like to have been. And yeah, I think pretty early on in karting we decided that single seaters was probably going to be where I ended up. And yeah, I think we chose the right path.
For sure, for sure. And you mentioned the benefits of sim racing earlier as far as training. For people that aren't as familiar, or for people that I suppose think of a sim as more of a video game situation, can you explain a bit more about how it actually helps you technically to get ready for a race?
Yeah, I think the in terms of learning the track and learning the car, we do that more so at High Tech Sim, where they have a full model of the F3 car, and they have laser scan models of all the tracks that we race at. So that's really, I think it's not going to be perfect, but I think it's probably as close as you're going to get a sim.
Mm.
I think the feeling we have in terms of braking and understanding the downforce and learning the tracks and stuff, I think it's pretty close to real life. I think the sim work I did at High Tech definitely helped, and gave me quite a good idea and a good baseline going into the weekend. I think my first couple of push laps at Macau compared to the sim were very similar.
Mm.
So I think it was quite helpful. And then in terms of the sim racing at home, I do a lot of sim racing at home. I'm a professional sim racer at home, which is not as much so the real life stuff, but definitely I think even racing against other professional sim racers is very good for racecraft. Understanding how to race wheel to wheel to another car. And I think it's good to see as well how you find sim racers, even if they may have no real life racing experience, the way they drive and the way they learn to drive a car is the exact same as how I would do it in real life. So it's quite cool to see how somebody with no real life experience gets to that point compared to how I would get to that point. So I think you can definitely learn quite a lot from sim racing.
Alex, it's been great talking to you. Thank you so much for taking the time. And as you said, we all need to get a bit more behind our representation out there in the racing scene. So we'll be cheering you on as you progress, and best of luck for next year.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.